Ooh, is it me or is it cold in here? Oh, maybe it's cold because today we're talking about the ice factions. Or maybe it's just cold because it's England in November and everything is bleak and freezing. One of the two. Anyway, today, in our series of Fire and Ice faction guides, we have Ginooo, Fire 2 champion and high level player on the Fire and Ice ladder. And he's going to talk about the ice factions, which are the Yetis and the Ice Maidens. Maybe a bit more conventional than the Volcano and especially the variable factions. But still some interesting ones to hear about the strategy and how to get the best of them. As ever, it's worth having a look at the faction boards, which I will link in the notes as you go along to keep an eye out. And yes, I hope this is useful. And while I'm here, I will also mention, as we talked to Zoras about his excellent video for the Yetis, his sort of faction introduction, which is a work of art and also very useful. But now, yeah, rounding up this series, we have Ginooo talking to me, Ejay, about the ice factions. Have fun, everyone.
Hello.
Ginooo. Nice.
How are you, dude?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm fine too.
Cool. So, are you feeling confident about the ice factions?
Oh, I think I'm fine now. So I have some good experience with Yetis, but I didn't play Ice Mains for quite a time now. So I normally play those faction in the Fire and Ice ladder. And shortly, I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago, I played an Ice Maiden game. It didn't went that well, but yeah, I think I learned a lot.
Okay. Everyone's learning, right? This is the thing. It's clear that there's, from talking to Fruity, they're still sort of being developed, and once they're on BGA, they're going to be developed more and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's much easier to develop those faction on BGA because you can play games a lot faster. So
Sure, yeah.
back on my days when I just played on Snellman, I have to say I didn't tried that much crazy stuff, because if you play a game like for around 3 or 4 weeks or even longer, then it really, yeah, it's not so cool if you make a crazy move and then your game is broken for the next 4 weeks, and you have to watch ever and ever again into this match and make moves. It's not so much fun. But if you play on BGA, you can just try out something, and if you lose the game, you lose it, doesn't matter, but at least the game is over after 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you don't tumble down the Fire and Ice ladder if you come in fourth.
Yeah. So because of that, I think it's easier to try out new and different lines with those expansion factions.
Agreed. So you looked at the questions, right? I'm basically going to go through them in order for each faction. But if there's anything that you want to add or anything else, just like say what you want, and it's all good. Did you listen to the one with Fruity yet?
Yeah, I listened to that. It was pretty nice
Yeah.
and interesting. So it's really interesting. That he said that he thinks double temple opening is great with river walkers. And then the funny thing was that that I played a game with with Rafa and two other guys on BGA 2 or 3 days ago, and then one of those guys also played River Walkers and started with double temple opening, and it worked.
Ah,
It worked pretty
okay.
nice. It was so. Of course, he was super lucky that he connected at the end of the game, but I think this works pretty nice, and yeah, I think I need to try that too.
Okay, there we go. That's cool to know that his hypothesis may be correct.
Yeah, yeah. No, and about ice faction. So there is in this game where I played Ice Maidens, I played against Fruity. I think it was also a game one game. So the first game in the Fire and Ice ladder. And at the end of the game, I was chatting a little bit, and he answered me, if you want to have a good guide, here is a link of a Board Game Geek thread. And yeah, I now read through this thread, and it's pretty nice. So it's Matt the Lesser who wrote a pretty nice article
Yes.
about them, and I didn't know that. I can remember that I once saw this user on Snellman uh, with the name Ice Maidens, and it was a Smurf account from him. And he said there that he tried a lot. He tried them a lot because he was thinking that they are very underestimated and they have a lot of potential. And yeah, so he tried different stuff, and yeah, I think he summarized pretty nice in which settings they are good and in which settings they are not that good, and which strategies you can play with them. So it was a very interesting article.
Okay. If you send me that. I spoke to Matt for he did the volcano guide. I don't know if I
Hmm.
mentioned, but yeah, he mentioned that he'd written an essay on Ice Maidens at some point. So yeah, I can link to that as well for the ice.
Yeah, wait, I.
Not that we'll need it after you've talked about them. Uh, cool. So, can you give an overview of how the ice terrain works in general in terms of digging, home terrain, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so at the start of the game, when you decide to pick ice mains or put ice mains into the auction, you have to pick a color. So they have not one special color, but you have to pick one color in the moment when you pick them. And of course, it can't be a color which is already picked. You have to pick another color, and then they both factions, so Ice Mains and Yetis, they start with two dwellings, and on their, let's say, home terrain, if that is, for example, green, then they can choose two green hexes. They immediately get transformed to ice. So you have your two starting locations, and from that point on, uh, you you need to use at least one dig for every hex you take. So for example, the color neighbors of green are blue and gray, and
Yep.
you need for gray, blue, and for green, which is your home terrain, you need one dig to transform those hexes into ice. And the rest of the color wheel works the same as for the other factions.
Very nicely explained. Very nicely explained.
But I think the crucial point is that you have no home terrain, so you need to use digs on for every single dwelling you want to place on the map.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, you need spades.
Yeah, exactly.
All I was going to say is it's worth mentioning that, like Volcano, once you have dug a hex to ice, nobody can ever transform it again, so it's safe forever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That works same as for the volcano factions, and yeah, this to just say one advantage for this is, for example, if you get spades from the cult track, uh, the nice thing is that you can use those spades on hexes, and if you transform those hexes into ice, no one can take them. So even if you don't build on those hexes in your first move, or someone else is before you in the player order, they cannot take those hexes, and that's one of the upsides from Ice and Volcano. So, but Volcano factions don't get any spades from the cults, but that's the upside for Ice factions.
Yeah, sure, sure, nice. So the two ice factions are the Ice Maidens and the Yetis. The weird thing in the rule is that it says that Yetis don't exist, even in Terra Mystica, but you can play as Yetis. I don't fully understand that, but whatever.
Yeah, that's strange.
Are they people in costumes? Is that what it's getting at?
Yeah, it seems.
Anyway, do you have a preference of which to go through first, or is there one that makes more sense to go through first?
Um, I don't really care. Maybe we start with Yetis, and I can start with with a funny with a funny story when I started to play Terra Mystica. So we it was back in my times when I studied, and we basically were a group of five. So it was me, my girlfriend, and three friends of us, and we played one time a week Terra Mystica, so 5-player Terra Mystica. And yeah, at some point, one of those friends bought us the Fire and Ice expansion, and I can remember that I read through the 6 new factions, and then I read somewhere a thread where it was written that Yetis are like the beginner faction, because you have a lot of possibilities with them, and they are pretty easy and straightforward to play. and then
Yes.
and then I played them the first time, and I ended with 60 points.
Yeah, because they're easy to play, but they're not easy to necessarily actually get points with slash win games with, I guess, right? A bit like say alchemists or nomads maybe.
Yeah, the thing was, of course, I was not that experienced at that time. It was my first steps into Terra Mystica, but that was pretty funny. That I was confident. I have
Yeah.
an edge on this game today. I'm gonna win it, and then I ended with 60 points. It was one of my worst scores ever.
I've read all the factions. I've got this fully worked out. Watch out,
Yeah,
everyone. The Yetis are coming.
yeah, these are coming. Yeah, right. But I think if we look at Yetis, so the to go through that faction, their main ability is that they can take power actions for one power less. So the 6 power actions from the bridge to the double spade, um, they always pay 1 power less. So you can take the bridge and the priest for 2 power, and for example the double spade for only 5 power.
Yep,
That's
which is obviously nice.
yeah, of course, that's pretty nice. And we also have to mention at that point that Yetis start with 12 power in Bowl 2. So they start with all of their power in Bowl 2. That's also, an advantage for them.
Oh yeah, right. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's important, because those small things sometimes you forget them, but those are very interesting and also important things.
Yes, yeah, especially when it synergizes so well with taking those cheap power actions. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second ability from Yetis is that if they build their stronghold, they can use power actions even if they are already taken.
Yes.
So, for example, you can take 3 times in one round the 7 coin action for only 3 power.
Yeah, which we played that game with Hephaestus. How
Yeah,
many times did he take the coin action? He took it some ridiculous number of times.
I think he took it 8 times or something. Yeah, that's that's funny. And Helai, at one point he did some analysis and analysis with the data from Snellman, and he said that the so for all the games where Yetis won the game, the average so they take 9 times the 7 coin action on average.
So yeah, the average game they win. So they're
Yeah, that's
taking it more
crazy.
than that a lot of the time.
So the thing is that of course Yetis are always a nice pick if it's, for example, a low coin setup, because that's a good way for them to produce coins. Just take the coin action as often as you want, from the moment on when you have your stronghold on the board. And yeah, that's pretty nice.
And it's worth mentioning as well that if you take it first, you still block other players from taking it. So if you are the first to take the coin action, you still stop other people from taking it, even though you can then take it again, right?
Exactly. That's correct. But yeah, the nice thing is that you sometimes you have uh, to sacrifice something else to not lose this action, because the action is better. But with Yetis, sometimes you can just let it on the table. Someone else takes it. You can do something else what is more important in that moment, and then you can take the coin action later on, or first try to maximize your leech and then take it even 2 times or something.
Sure, yeah. So often, yeah, you're allowing other important actions to be done first before you, yeah, get those
Yeah,
coins
exactly.
again and again.
Yeah, there are two more things for Yetis if we look at the board, so at the player board for them. Uh, One thing is that, and that's only for Yetis, their sanctuary and their stronghold, so both of their big buildings, are worth 4 power tokens to form a city.
Yes,
So
as opposed to 3.
yeah, instead of 3, they are worth 4 power. So you basically can build a city with stronghold and 3 dwellings, because every dwelling is worth 1 power and the stronghold is worth 4 power. So you have, if you summarize that up, you have 7, and so you can form a town with that.
they're they're pretty crazy. And for
Yeah,
leech as well. So they get 4, you get 4 leech if
yeah,
someone
exactly,
builds next to your stronghold or your sanctuary.
exactly. And the last thing is, and this is for both Ice Maidens and Yetis, that the dig upgrade only costs 1 worker instead of 2. So you just pay a worker 5 coins and the priest for a dig upgrade with Ice Maidens and with Yetis.
Cool.
And I think this is to compensate that they have to, yeah, dig every single hex if they want to build more dwellings. So it often makes a lot, or I would say most of the time, you upgrade digs with both factions.
Sure. Yeah, and you still get those 6 points for doing
Exactly,
so. Yeah.
exactly.
Um, cool. So, of those things, is there a particular one that defines how we play Yetis? Is there something that dominates the way that you play them?
Uh, I think you can't say that there is one particular strategy or something how to play them, because I think in general the ice factions are pretty flexible. So you can play with them very different lines, and a lot of lines works pretty well. Uh, a line I really like with Yetis is so first of all, with Yetis the most important thing for them is that they find a way to maximize their leech. So it's if you want to outplay them, just don't give them any leech, and they
Yeah.
really struggle.
Because they need those. Yeah, they're looking to hit those cheap power actions as much
Exactly.
as they can.
As much as they can, and of course with they can use this power much better than other factions, because first of all they can use power actions as often as they want, and they pay less for the power actions, so they can get out a better effort from those actions. So a strategy I really like to play with Yetis is open with the stronghold and then try to place 3 or 4 priests in the cult tracks in the first round, because in the moment you have your stronghold on the board, you can take the priest action as often as your power allows you, and so you can get some easy uh, three spot three spots in the cults, and yeah, that's pretty cool. So you can with this strategy, you often can easily win at least 3 cults until the end of the game.
And is that a common strategy? Do you see other people doing that, or is that a Ginooo special?
No, it's not a Gino special. The thing is, I can remember the first time I played against one. It was 1400 player on Snellman, so it was the first time for me playing against such a good player on Snellman, and he picked those Yetis and he played that strategy, and it worked out amazingly well. And I was
Okay.
really impressed by that. And so at the end, I was discussing with him a little bit the strategy, and I think it's a common strategy. You can do that, but if other players play well, they just try to block you, to block some good cult tracks immediately with putting priests there, or for example, the priest you get from the bonus tile, or they take the priest action themselves. So yeah, there are ways to counter that, but if you are able to get some nice three spots, it's super nice. So I really liked it. But as already mentioned before, that's one line, but there are super very different lines. You can also just open with a temple, the standard opening, and with Yetis, it's super nice to take the air 2 favor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because of you get
yeah,
the
yeah.
power actions.
Yeah, you get the power actions, and yeah, you can use that tile pretty nice. And so I would say, in my opinion, it's 90% of the time better than Earth One, because you can just expand faster, and you can use that tile so well, so that often you can just compensate it with other things. So you don't necessarily need this Earth One.
Because the thing I guess this is all like you're building the economy, but you need to score somehow. So if you're not taking Earth One, say you're scoring off the track, the round scoring, and you're scoring off the bonus tiles, I guess you're trying
Yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was what I wanted to say with that. Yeah, so that I think it's super important to understand that this Air 2 is super strong for Yetis. What's also to mention is that I know that this is a strategy Helai really likes to play, is building trading posts in the first round. So normally you try to build as many dwellings as possible to expand your economy. But Yetis produce 2 power, 2 coins for every single trading post, not just for the third and fourth. So, for example, if you have already 2 trading posts on the board, you already produce 4 power and 4 coins with those trading posts.
So that's even better than Air Two. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also a way. The thing, I think you just need to find a way to get a lot of power. and use this power for some good power actions, and try to expand and rise your economy with that.
Cool. So yeah, I'm really getting the sort of the flexibility, like you're saying. You've got some like totally different openings there, building the stronghold and like hammering repeatedly the same power action, or building like multiple trading posts, which is like a not often used opening, or going for a temple and getting that air too. Yeah, like very versatile in how you can play them to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing what's to mention at this point is that often it's not so great burning down too much with Yetis, because later on in the game you get a huge amount of power just with your board. So just with the things you produce with your buildings, because also your stronghold gives you 4 power, and if you have all trading posts and the stronghold on the board, you already produce 12 power. And let's say you also have this air 2, so you produce 16 power, and you really want to get them and not waste them.
And at that point, it's fueling your entire economy, because if you haven't got workers, I guess you can just take the worker action. If you need digs, you've got the digs there that you need, or you can just get those coins, like get those valuable
Yeah,
coins.
so normally you can react on a lot of things as long as you get enough power. Because if you need workers, you can just take them and no one can block you. That's the nice thing.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's sounding pretty fun so far. I've never played them. This sounds fun.
Yeah, you really have to try them out.
Yeah, that would be my next one probably. Um, Is there anything else that's worth sort of other important info, or maybe not so important info? The thing I'm seeing is that the eighth dwelling produces a worker, which is slightly different to base factions where you don't get a worker for that eighth dwelling. You've mentioned that they get a discount on dig advancing, that every trading post produces 2 power plus 2 coins. Is that about all the sort of niggly details of the Yetis?
Yeah, I think we summarized everything. Yeah, that's the last thing that I forgot about, that the 8 dwelling with Yetis and with Ice Maidens also produces a worker. So you can produce max 9 workers if you have all dwellings on the board.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you've talked about strategy. The next question is, what is a basic strategy? And in summary, are we saying that there is no set strategy and experiment and do different things? Is that what you would say?
I think in general, round 4 digging is pretty nice for both ice factions. I think you can abuse pretty well the round 4 digging, because since you just pay 1 worker for the dig upgrade, it's easier to balance out your economy after that round. And also you can use more digs in this round and make even more points. And the nice thing is, after you dig those hexes, no one can dig them back, because often with I don't know, alchemists or halflings or other factions, you dig a lot in round 4 and then you run into the problem that someone digs your hex back.
Mm, mm.
But you don't have this problem with the ice factions. In general, I think early dwelling rounds are not so good, again for both factions, because it's not so easy to, you can't make a dwelling rush or something like this. It's not working, because you need, for every hex, for every dwelling you want to build, you need a dig, or even more
Yep.
digs if it's an expensive hex. And so other factions can abuse the early dwelling rounds much better than you, if you play an ice faction.
Yeah, that's good. And do you want a high are you looking for a high scoring game, like we mentioned earlier, to score off the track and the bonus tiles? And are you looking to win network and stuff like that?
Yeah, you basically, of course, it always depends on your strategy, and but you can always go for network with them. So if you are able to build a good economy, you can always easily compete for network. Not always, but
Mhm.
you have a good chance to compete for network. It's not so easy because I often ended at the end with only, I don't know, 13 structures on the map, because you don't have to underestimate this, that using digs for every hex is expensive, and you really
Yeah.
have to, yeah, you really need a good economy to make this possible. But I also had games where I was able to build 16 structures. So it really depends. It really depends a lot if your enemies decides to, yeah, give you some leech or not.
Yeah, that's yeah, you want that leech, I guess. And I guess that's
Yeah,
another reason for like a stronghold opening, or I guess it's another reason to build the sanctuary is that they give you those easier towns and earlier towns, and they give you that leech that you really want, I suppose.
yeah. And yeah, one thing what's to mention with Yetis is, I my personal opinion is that often it's not worth it. But with Yetis, it's easier to build for cities, because since your big buildings are worth four power tokens
Mhm.
instead of three, uh, it's easier to build for cities.
Yeah, yeah, you just sort of need two less upgrades across, yeah, those four
Yeah.
towns.
Next thing with Yetis is that the power town is a super nice town for them. Because
Oh, give the power town a go. Nice. Love it.
yeah, normally the power town is not the best choice, or of course always depending on the situation. But for Yetis, you see them often taking the power down with the first down if the two key down is already taken, and if they need some more stuff for that round, the power down is always a great choice for Yetis.
Yeah, and it just gets you a worker action or
Maybe also two actions if you get, I don't know, 5 or 6 power with the 8 power from the city in bowl 3. You can
yeah.
take two actions, and yeah, it's even better. It's much better than a workout down or a coin down. So the power down is, if you want an economic down. So if we compare workout down, uh, coin down, and power down, the power down is always better for Yetis.
And a question I have is how are you generating your spades in general? Are you trying to use the double coin, sorry, the double dig power action a lot, or are you trying to get spades off the cults with all those priests that you're sending to cults, or are you just waiting to get your digs upgraded? I guess it depends on what stage of the game we're at.
Yeah, of course it depends. So I think it's always nice if you get spades from the cults, but it's not always so easy. Uh, but I think in the first 3 rounds, first 4 rounds, um, the double spade action is let's say the first 3 rounds. The first 3 rounds, the double spade action is a nice way to expand, to get some dwellings on the board. And later on, round 4, 5, 6, you will often see upgrading them their spades, and then yeah, use workers to dig out more hexes and expand more.
Cool. And you also mentioned that, yeah, they can win. Like you said, you can even win sort of three cults because you can get those priests early and cheaply.
Yeah, if you go for that strategy, you put some priests in the first round into the cult track, and then you try to rush the first city and take the two key down to
Mm.
yeah, and then you have a good chance to win 3 cults.
Cool. This is good.
Of course, don't forget that going up in the cults is also nice because you always get this power if you get
Yes.
over the steps. And yeah, that's also a nice way to generate some power.
Yeah, great. So we're sort of talking about how strong they are and you can do all this stuff and they've got all these strategies. But in general, are they good? You played them the first time. You played Terra Mystica and you lost. And you were at that point were a future Fire to Open champion. Are they a good faction or not?
Um, I think they are a good. I think they are a good faction. Of course, it always depends on the setup and. Uh, but so I can remember that in the early games, Yetis seemed to be a super strong faction, and then people realized that and yeah understand that they can do anything if you don't give them leech in the early game, and so this is always the danger you run into if you pick them, and so if the color setup is so that people need to upgrade next to you, so they have no other choice, so you're pretty safe. But often there are these possibilities where you can upgrade or on the left side of the map or on the right side, and so I personally always take care and yeah think about that if it's better to upgrade on the other side and not give Yetis this extra power in the early game, because later on it's not that crucial. If they have a bad start, they really struggle and they struggle the whole game. But if they have a good start, they can easily expand great and yeah have a good start. And so I think that's the big counter for Yetis. If you get lead strafed, you have a tough game.
Yeah, okay. So that's which is it's kind of unpredictable in a way, isn't it, I guess? And it's going to be harder to think in a Snellman game you can think for longer about where the leech party is going to be. But when you've only got a few minutes at the start of a real time game, that might be slightly harder on Board Game Arena.
Yeah, for sure. But I think often it also makes a lot of sense to build your structures next to Yetis, because if you can maximize your own leech there, it's of course also better for you. So you can't just play to block Yetis, because you can of course also win against them, or even if you give them even if you give them leech in the early game or anything. So it always depends, and it's not so easy said. But I think in general that's the big issue for Yetis. If they don't get leech in the early game, they really struggle. They struggle even more than other factions.
Yeah. But if you just avoid them, you're not going to get the leech from them. Oh, that's why Terra Mystica is such a good game.
I agree.
um, so, are there any particular maps or expansion scoring or that they work well with the Yetis?
So I think, yeah, so expansion scorings, I think the edge scoring is super, yeah, it again depends on the setup, but they can use every single expansion scoring pretty nice. So clusters are great if they have upgraded dick and ships. They can just cluster around. Um, the distance, Sanctuary Stronghold distance and distance, they are both great because with Yetis you often build both big buildings, so you can try to maximize their distance. Uh,
Yeah.
it depends a little bit where you start, and if you start with a stronghold, you if you want to go for the sanctuary stronghold distance, you need to care about this, because if you upgrade in the center of the map, then of course it's not so easy to get a big sanctuary stronghold distance. But in general, I think since those factions are so, or Yetis are so flexible, they can contest for all the expansion scorings.
Cool. And so the last question really is, are they? I think we've talked about how you counter them, haven't you? So the only thing to ask is, are they fun to play? They sound like a fun faction to play, and like a good one for people who are new to Fire and Ice, maybe like to give them a go straight away, because it's this sort of whole new way of having freedom to take whatever power action you want and like rule the board. It might be difficult to win, but they do sound fun.
Yeah, so I personally really like to play them. So if I see, also in the Fire and Ice ladder, if I see a possibility to play them, I go for them because it's always fun. You can do a lot with. I can tell you one example. So the first Fjords League I played, so Bowser Hacks was in my game, and at some point I had maxed my ship and my digs, and I dug all the hexes of both sides from the big land masses so that Bowser couldn't connect anymore with, with nomads.
Okay.
So because you really have to dig all the hexes on both sides of the river, because otherwise he could take one of those hexes. But I think it was a dig round, and I just dug all the hexes because he was my biggest competitor. If I didn't, I think if I didn't do that, he would have won the game, and that was my way to to kill him. And that was
Nice.
pretty funny because I had a ton of resources, and I just dug all the hexes on both sides of the river, and he couldn't connect anymore because everything was white.
If you can find it, send me the link and I'll try and include the link to your
Yeah, I can send that
dig
later on.
spree.
That was pretty funny.
Ah, cool, man. That was really good. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to mention about the
Yeah,
Yetis?
you asked me before on which maps they're good or bad.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it's a bit hard for me to answer that. I think they have an edge for every map. So I think one general thing is that so you have to make always one big decision at the beginning of the game, and that's which color do I take. And so you really want to also have some starting locations where the other factions don't take away your hexes, because you want expand that fast. So you really need to to have a possibility to get those hexes also a little later on, so in round 3, 2, 3 or something. And so you really want to for example, if you play on base map and there is already picked, I don't know, I think I saw a game where there was already picked green and gray first and second seed. Don't ask me why you want to ever do that, picking green into gray with the first two picks. But then I think it was Matt the Lesser. It was a game from him. He then picked brown because he asks himself what will be he was in third position. What will be the fourth pick? And even if someone picks black or yellow, he still had enough possibilities to get hexes later on. And I think that's a super important decision you have to make at the beginning. And I really often struggle to find the right color. And that, of course, depends a lot on the map. Uh,
Mm.
but that's also a possibility to block away one faction. So, for example, if you pick black on the base map, you can block darklings with that, and often that's
Yep.
also a possibility to just block away one faction with your color choice.
Yeah, sure. That does sound in a way tricky, that it does require some knowledge of each map and what color combinations affect each other on different maps. Interesting.
And I think in general on fjords they are pretty nice because as I already mentioned, they nearly always upgrade digs, and so that's a nice way to dig through these big land masses
Yep.
where
Yep.
other often struggle or get cut off or what else. But they are very flexible and can also, I don't know, take a hex with a cost of 3 digs or something to just get through these land masses.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I think they are uh, not one of the best factions, but they are a pretty okay faction on fjords.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. Do you want to move on to the Ice Maidens?
Yeah, so Ice Maidens.
Hey, one thing I wanted to ask you, sorry. What is the name of the Yetis and the Ice Maidens in German and or Italian, as we've got a foreign language speaker?
So Ice Maidens is Frostfeen. In English is boy, I don't even know how to pronounce that. Fairy.
Oh, a fairy. A fairy.
Yeah, fairy. So frozen, yeah, frozen fairy is the translation. I don't know why they
Oh,
translated.
frost fiend. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And Yetis is Yetis. It's the same.
Oh, okay. Easy.
Yeah, that's the easy one.
Nice little diversion there. Anyway, Ice Maidens or Frost Fiend,
Hmm.
um, what is their main ability?
So their main ability is that they start with favor tile. So with Ice Maidens, it's even harder at the beginning of the game because you don't even have to just pick a color, but you also have to choose a favor tile.
Yes, yes.
So you have even more freedom or what you can do at the start of the game.
Yeah, so it's a lot to think about, but obviously a very nice benefit to have that free favor tile at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And their stronghold ability is that they get so it's nearly the same as engineers. So they get when they pass, they get 3 points for every temple on the board.
Yeah, so like engineers who get 3 points for every bridge on the board, Ice Maidens 3 points for every temple, and you can have a maximum of 3 temples, like
Yeah.
normal. Cool.
And as we already mentioned before, their 8 dwelling produces a worker, and their dig upgrade just costs 1 worker instead of 2.
Yeah, yeah, like the Yetis. So which of those two things is the most important when you're playing them?
Yeah, I think it always, so with Ice Mains you always have the we have 2 possibilities, or you play tall or you play white, so that you expand.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think you at the beginning of the game you need to let both possibilities open, and then around 2 3, depending on where the others are and what the others are doing. Yeah, you need to make a decision. Do I go wide or do I go tall? And that's always a really hard decision.
Because I guess if you're going tall, you can try and build like if you're going for an engineer's bridge game, a hard thing to pull off, you can try and build that stronghold and try and get as many temples as
Yeah,
you can and sit on them and just score off them for a while.
yeah. So try to get 9 points with passing. And yeah, I have already seen that people were able to get around nearly 40 points just with the stronghold ability. No, not 40. That was a little bit. No, I just miscalculated. So 3 times 9 plus 6. I think that was the maximum I ever saw. It was 35.
Which is still a nice point tool.
Yeah, about 33. I'm not I'm not a good calculator.
Oh yeah. 27, 33. There we go. Yeah. We don't have to worry about that. BGA does. it works out
Yeah,
for you.
Ejay does this for us.
So again, you've got these sort of, well, yeah, sort of, yeah, like you say, the tall or the wide way of playing, and that sort of depends which dominates. In terms of a basic strategy, I guess an important thing is that early favor tile. What type of favor tile are you looking to take with them?
So I think it should always be an econ favor,
Uh-huh.
because I can remember that I read I think it was also Matelesa wrote that it's so if you take an econ favor in round one, an econ favor in round zero is even more 20% stronger than taking it in round one, because you already produced that in round one. So you take it before producing. So for example, if you take the World Cup, so the Earth 2, you produce you produce one more worker, one more power at the beginning of the game. And so because of that, I think it should always be an econ favor.
Because of the way that snowballs. Yeah.
Yeah, because of the way that snowballs. And you still can build a temple in round one and take Earth 1 or even a second econ favor, depending on what's your strategy. But in general, most often I have seen or Earth 2 or Air 2. So that are the most common favorite tiles picked at the beginning of the game.
Any reason why not fire one? I guess because, well, you can
Uh,
answer. Is it because you get a lot of coins at the start of the game?
I think you can use that one worker in round one is often so important. I mean, if
Yep.
you think about that for a second, so normally you are able to get some coins in round one. You don't need them so hard, but it's even harder. It's much harder to to find a way to get one more worker in round one. And so with that worker, you can build one more structure in round one, and that can snowball even better. But there is also a second reason, um, and that's that you start with two steps on that color on the cult track. So if you take Earth 2 to an Earth, if you take Air 2 to an Air, and it's easier to hit the fourth step. And Fire 1 don't gives you that much. So Ice Maidens start on air and water at the beginning of the game. So on one step on air, one on water,
Yep.
and there are some rare circumstances where water 2 is also a possibility, but you don't take that at starting, but in round 1, so you can hit step 4
Yep.
in round 1 after round 1 and get, I don't know, the priest, or I think the other thing is spade, right?
On water. Yeah. Yeah. Spade. Yeah.
Yeah, so spade or priest.
Yep. Yep.
So in general, Ice Maidens can do pretty well in cults. So I already saw some games where they won all four cults at the end of the game. If they, and that's always the case when they play tall, so like Swarmlings.
And that's because you're, I guess, like chaos, in a similar way to chaos magicians, you're building a lot of temples, so you're generating priests that you can send to
Yeah,
cults, and you
yeah,
are getting those favor tiles which can send you up the cults.
that's exactly the thing. So you normally start with a temple in round 1, and then you build a second temple in round 2 or in round 3, and because of that, it's it's always nice to have the temple scoring event in round 2 or 3, because other faction often don't build a second temple, because that could harm their ability to snowball or to get a good economy. But Ice Maidens really like that, to build a second temple pretty early. Um, so if they already start with one econ favor, they take a second econ favor or Earth 1 in round 1, and then they can take for example, if they took Earth 1 in round 1, they can take a second Deacon favor in round 2. And so you can you can also get a good economy with this strategy.
Cool. A word on Air 2. They start with 6 power in bowl 2 and 6 power in bowl 1. So they're a bit of a disadvantage there compared to other factions. So Air 2 would kind of get you in the same position as like halflings and engineers with, well, slightly ahead with 10 power in bowl 2 at the start of the game.
Yeah. So normally, so I think Earth 2 is the standard favor to start.
Mm-hmm.
And Air 2, you take Air 2 if you want to secure the double spade, for example, in round 1.
Cool.
If you see you get an edge on double spade if you take the 2 air favor. And then it always depends a lot what's in the track. So if there are some air rewards in the track, I think it's often better to just start with Air 2 and try to get as much cult rewards as you can. And if there are, for example, the digging into the game where you get coins from Earth, or the other Earth event where you get spades, it's always nice to start with Earth 2 because you can get more effort out of the cult.
Awesome. So again, sort of talking about the strategy, in general, they're a bit more on the vanilla side compared to Yetis. Yetis are a bit wild with their ability. Ice Maidens are a bit more normal. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say, but I think in general also for Ice Maidens, round 4 digging is pretty nice.
Because they get that cheap dig upgrade.
Yeah, cheap dig upgrade, and I know also late down events are great for them. So downs round 6 are pretty nice for them because they can dig hexes, secure the down hexes, and then build up those downs later on. Yeah, if we look at the second at the expansion scorings, end game scorings, I think that the worst one is the Sanctuary Stronghold, because they normally don't want to build their sanctuary. The goal is, I think, to build your stronghold in round 4 or 5, and then try to get out as many points from that stronghold as possible.
With having temples on the board.
Yeah, with having temples on the board, and if you build your sanctuary, you have to put back a temple on your board and can't get the points from this temple. And so you normally don't want to build your sanctuary. So the goal often is to have stronghold and 3 temples on the board at the end of round 4 or 5.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So because of that, also the Sanctuary Stronghold event is very nice if it's in round 4 or 5.
Get that stronghold up. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. So obviously there's sort of, for people who are new to this, the parallel is the similar faction is engineers with the bridge scoring. With engineers, a lot of the time you don't really use the bridge scoring. It's not the best way for engineers to score, or you might just do it in round 6 if you've got some extra resources, you know. Is that ever true with Ice Maidens, or do you always want to be scoring the temples with your stronghold?
I think it's a bit different than engineers because, first of all, if you compare the big buildings at engineers with the rest of the buildings, they are super expensive.
Yep.
And that it's not such a big difference at Ice Main since they have normal costs. So a trading post costs 2 worker 3 coins if you build next to someone else, and the stronghold is 4-6. And if you compare it with engineers, where a trading post just costs 1 worker and 2 coins, and a temple 1 worker and 4 coins, but the big buildings 3 workers and 6 coins, it's a huge difference. So you
Yeah.
often can just build more of the more of the auto buildings, and get out the same amount of points until the end of the game, or even more, because you just win more cults, you win the network, and so it's much better, or it's often much better for engineers to just build the auto dwellings and try to maximize your economy. But with Ice Maidens, it's different, because first of all, you already have those temples on the board, and with engineers, you need to build bridges, which just gives you 3 points. Of course, also cities if you need them, but often you also just build them to get the points. And with Ice Maidens, you already have those temples on the board, and you can just build the stronghold and then score those temples for the rest of the game. And that's I think that's the huge difference. And because of that, this stronghold is for Ice Maidens much better than the stronghold for engineers.
Great. That's a very nice explanation. I like that a lot. Um, you mentioned earlier about playing them wide or tall. Can you? It sounds tricky, but can you speak a bit more to that and a bit about how that works differently and why you would decide to go one way or the other?
So when I play Ice Maidens, I normally decide. So I have to say that I just played them with 2 end scorings. And so at the beginning of the game, I always decided, do I go for network or do I go for the second end scoring? With Ice Maidens, I never went for both of them. So
Okay.
because you won't have so many structures on the board, and even enough to build for the second end scoring. Um, I think earlier I didn't mention which second end scorings are great for them. So I think in general, the uh, the edge the edge scoring could work if you play a digging line, but in general the clusters and distance work pretty well for them.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is clusters, you often just play a 2 city strategy and try to maximize the clusters until the end of the game. Or also the distance works pretty nice. So you don't need so many structures on the board, but you just try to maximize your digs and your ships, and to maximize your distance. So you have a great chance to just win that end scoring, and maybe even end last on network, but that doesn't matter.
You get your 18 points.
Yeah. If you get or even 12 or 18 points from the distance, and if you play, so that means that you also play tall, so you have enough priests and stuff to do well in the cults. So I think you have some nice ways to score points with them.
Cool. But if
Uh,
if it's like a sanctuary stronghold distance, extra scoring, I guess on Snellman maybe you wouldn't choose Ice Maidens, but in a BGA game, if they're in the auction and you get them, you're maybe going to say, right, I'm going to totally ignore that and I'm go on a expanding digging line and try and win network.
yeah, of course, that's a possibility, but at the end of the day, you always need at the beginning of the game, you need to make yourself an overview. Where do I can make points? Because somewhere you need to make points in the end scoring, or you make points in the cult track, or in one of the end scorings, or network, or the Fire and Ice expansion network end scoring. And yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense if you uh, decide that at the beginning of the game, and then you just go down a certain line and ignore the other one. Because if you play on a high level table, uh, it's really it's super yeah. It could happen that at the end of the game you get nowhere points. So you lose cults, you lose network, you lose the other end scoring because you wanted everything and didn't focus well enough for certain things. And so often it helps you to just decide at the beginning of the game, where do I have an edge? Where do I can make some points, and then focus on that and try to win that and ignore the other one.
Cool. That's really good. I like that. So, are the Ice Maidens a strong faction or a weak faction in general?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So in my opinion, they are super tricky to play. And also, in my opinion, it's not so easy to play them. So, of course, we can say again, yeah, they are super flexible and you can do a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, you need, yeah, to find a way to also make enough points at the end of the game. And I have to say that I already had some struggle with them. So it can go
Okay.
well, but yeah, it can also end in a disaster.
Okay.
So they are a tricky faction. In my opinion, Yetis are a lot easier to play than Ice Maidens.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. But in the hands of of a a good player, in the hands of Matt the Lesser, the Ice Maidens can be very good.
Yeah, they can be very good. I think, for example, the if we look at the bonus tiles, the spade tile is always nice for Ice Maidens because at the beginning of the game they don't have already an upgraded dig, so they need power actions or they need spades from the cults or they need to find a way to get spades. Since they have
Mm.
no home terrain, they need to transform some hexes, and uh, that's one thing. And for scoring tiles, I think again, like with Yetis, early dwelling events are not great for them. Late dwelling events are great for them because at the
Hmm.
end of the game they often can expand pretty well. Uh, the dwelling pass style is, if there is the dwelling pass style in the game, that's not so nice for Ice Maidens because normally other factions can abuse that much better than Ice Maidens. But the pass shipping is pretty nice for them because they have a lot of priests since they should have a lot of temples on the board. So they often just maximize their digs and chips, and so they can abuse very well the shipping tile, pass shipping tile.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, cool. Are there any we've talked a bit about expansion scoring, but are there any maps that they work particularly well with? I guess it's a similar story to Yetis.
Yeah, it's that's a super tough question for me because I think I don't have enough experience, or I just watched and I think I have 11 games with Ice Maidens on Snellman, and I can remember that some of them were live games with friends, so uh, and also 3-player games, so I can't compare that so good. But in general, I think with Yetis, I also had I already had some experience with on good tables, and I also played against good people. And with Ice Maidens, I just had one game. This one game in the Fire and Ice ladder in game one, where I played against Fruity. And yeah, that was, for me, it was really tough to find ways to score in that on that table. That was not an easy job. But I can remember that there was also the distance and scoring in the game, and I just went from the left down edge to the right upper edge, so I made maximum distance at the end of the game, and so I got some nice. I think I got the 18 points from the distance and scoring, and I got 0 points from network. So that was the one example. What I said before, that I just had the plan. I upgraded digs and chips with Ice Maidens, and tried to win the distance and try to get some points from the stronghold. That was my start. I think I ended on 130 or something. That was just enough for getting third.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now actually. Yeah, I can see your dwellings in the top right and the bottom left, yeah.
in general, I think distance and clusters are nice end scorings for them.
Cool. So yeah, they do sound tricky for sure. Unlike Yetis. If you're an opponent playing the Ice Maidens, is there anything you can do to get in their way or counter? I guess their ability, you can't really block their ability because it's just inherent, but is there anything else you can do?
That's a good question.
I'm thinking about it and I feel like there's not much in particular that you can really do to
I
them.
think you cannot do more than with other factions. So
Yeah,
maybe
so yeah.
maybe just care that they don't take your key hexes, or you don't give them the possibility to just dig away your hex, and because they don't, if they don't have to, or if other things are more important, they can just dig a hex which is important for you and for them in white, and build later on that hex because you can't dig it back. So
Yeah, I guess yeah.
maybe that's the only thing, that you care not to lose key hexes to them. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's the same as with all the other factions.
Yeah, just keep an eye on when they've got that ship fully upgraded and dig fully upgraded, and yeah, then watch out for your hexes because they can. I guess
Yeah.
the thing is, with one worker, they can take 3 different colors straight away. Yeah, that's true of any faction. Yeah, whatever. They can dig your hexes.
Yeah, for example, in that game I played in the Fire and Ice ladder, I can remember that I, at the end of the game in round 6, I killed the connection of Darklings, and because of that I ended third and not last. Darklings with ship 3, or in general black with ship 3, can surround this eastern big island. There is always a black hex with a range of 3 water hexes.
Yeah.
So with ship 3 you can expand there really nice. And they delayed that until the last round, and I already had upgraded digs there, and I think I had 2 workers left or something. And so I decided to dig one of those hexes into white, and they had no more possibility to connect. So, and that's one example. So maybe you don't delay that too long, so that Ice Mains have resources left to make moves against you, and you don't give them a possibility to to do such things. But in general, it always, you have enough time, because it's not so easy with Ice Mains to do things pretty early and fast. So it dures a bit until you have everything upgraded and everything set up to put down the things.
Cool. Um, is there anything else about the Ice Maidens that we haven't talked about, or that you think about the Yetis or the Ice factions in general?
I think more or less I try to cover everything.
I think you've done a very good job. Yeah, I think I've learned a lot, so that's great.
Thank you.
Hopefully, other people will do too.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Um,
I think you just have to try them out and experiment a little bit with them. So they have a lot of potential, but I think there is still a lot to try, and maybe we see some new lines with them. It could happen because they are not so popular on. So Ice Mains are not that popular on Snellman. They get not picked very often in high ranked games.
mm, mm.
So
So
maybe
yeah,
we
it's interesting.
maybe we see some new crazy stuff with them.
Yeah, I hope they do get picked because I can imagine the Yetis are just going to be so. Everyone wants to play Yetis, right? So that means Ice Maidens maybe won't get chosen very much, but I hope they do.
Yeah, I hope so too. Maybe there is one last thing we can say about the landscapes from those two factions.
Ah, I always forget the landscapes. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe that's interesting. So Ice Maiden, so both landscapes have no um so you can build them from the beginning on. No, how you say that in English? No
prerequisites. Yes. Yeah.
That's a complicated word. Prerequisites.
It's,
Okay.
there's a lot of R's, which yeah, for a German a German speaker is not so easy.
Yeah.
Prerequisites.
Prerequisites. Okay. So I learned something. Okay. So the landscape from Ice Maidens is called Winterfall, and they every time they so if they have the landscape on the board, every time they build a temple, they get immediately one spade.
Nice.
So I think that should be our early game landscape, because then you can get, if you build 3 temples or even more, so you have the possibility to build 4 temples if you also build your sanctuary. But every time you build your temple, you get a spade. And I think this landscape can help you a lot to get some better expansion at the beginning of the game, because often you really need to find ways to get spades in the early game, and so that's a nice way to get some spades.
Build a temple, get a spade. Nice.
And the landscape of Yetis is called Frozen Peak, and in the moment as also no prerequisite.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, that was spot on.
And so in the moment they build the landscape, they get immediately 2 new power tokens in bowl 3. That's also interesting.
They like power, don't they?
Yeah, they like it a lot.
2
And
extra.
yeah, so if they didn't burn until that point, they have 14 power in the circle.
Scary.
Yeah, very scary.
Even scarier.
So they can make even more coin actions.
I want to see. I'm sure this will happen, but I want to start seeing record coin actions per game for Yetis. That's going to be a big competition, isn't it? What's the most you could ever possibly get?
The new challenge.
And I guess win the game. Like win the game most coin actions taken, because you could just take loads and not win, but to win the game and do it would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. Yeah, but I think those 2 landscapes are, maybe the Yetis one is a little bit boring. You just get the 2 power tokens, but I think the one for Ice Maidens is super interesting, and I think it changes their game a lot to get those early spades. Super interesting landscape.
Cool. Thank you very much for doing this. It's fun. I hope people find it useful. Yeah, very grateful.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was also a lot of fun for me. And I learned a new word.
And I learned Frostfreunden.
Frostfeen.
Frostfeen.
Yeah.
There we
exactly. Nice.
go. Cool. Right, I'd better go. Thank you again, and I will speak to you soon about stuff.
All right. Thanks for having me, and see you around, mate.
See ya.
Bye bye.